Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us Adam Adams, who is the founder of GrowYourShow.com. Adam, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
Hey, doing really good. I'm excited to talk about growing your show because guess what? There are so many people with a podcast or thinking about starting a podcast, and you got to get the word out. So I want to learn from you and see what your experience has brought you, but get us started with a little bit of what your background is and then what led you to focus on the podcast market.
Yeah, my background is all about entrepreneurship. My dad was always an entrepreneur and a real estate investor. So I started real estate investing in college and just following in my stepdad's footsteps, everything that he told me to do, well, except for some of them. He told me to save 10%. He was pretty wise, but I was pretty young. But I did start investing in real estate and starting a couple of companies, and they worked out for the most part really well around, I would say, the crash of 2008-9 area. It was very challenging. I'll be honest about that for sure, both in my real estate ownership at the time and in my business. It was a challenge, but that's really where my background comes from. And why I started into a podcast was when I was doing more real estate syndications, they're called, where you're raising money, you're attracting a lot of capital. And in doing so, I knew that there's some type of KLTI blueprint, know, like, trust, and then invest. And I knew that I'm not really going to be able to go and ask people to just invest just because I have a good deal, like getting and proposing to somebody that just is cute. I haven't even talked to her yet. So I just thought I've got to get known. And so I started podcast in 2017, and it blew up. And we had, we became a top 1% show, and I ended up selling it because I had helped a few people launch podcasts. And so just a couple years ago, I started helping people with their podcasts, and it was working out. I did it for free. And then in last year, I said, all right, I'm gonna start Grow Your Show, because I'm gonna niche down and just help people have bigger podcasts, because it really mattered to me. And what I noticed was, if you don't have that marketing piece, if you don't really push it out, it's not if you build it, they will come. It's not if you build it, they will come. If you build it and you market it really, really hard, or have a team like mine do it for you, then they'll come. Then they'll be listening. Then you'll get your influence. So that's kind of where that all came in.
I love it. And I know that you've got in the marketing world, you've got so many options that can really frustrate you with the shiny objects, ooh, this is good, and ooh, look, I should do this and that and the other, and chat bots and Facebook ads and all of these things, right? But I really feel like there are some core pillar foundational things that should always be done. And when you kind of pull back and look at the 30,000-foot view, and we think about like a small business owner, entrepreneur, what are some marketing pillars that we should focus on? Well, number one, you should not sell. You should educate, and you should use content marketing. Okay, good. Check. Heard of that before. That's great. Well, now what kind of content should we use? Well, that becomes foundational, because if you do it the right way, now when you do these other things like a Facebook ad campaign or whatever else that you're thinking of doing, now it's built on the foundation of your brand being teaching and an educator. And I feel like, you should be publishing, your articles, your blog posts, whatever, written content you want to think of that way. And then you should be using your thought leadership. And there's two paths we can go. And you don't have to go far online or social media to go, you must be doing video. Well, video is wonderful. But here's something that I personally see. So many of the people out there that are putting out videos, they use certain players, and one comes to mind, Wistia, and I know that it's probably a setting, but if I'm watching a video, let's say that you're teaching on something, and I put that in my browser, and now I want to listen to what you have to say, and now I want to just be doing some other work and have it go in the background, Wistia cuts it off. And it's like, hold on, I really don't need to watch Adam's lips move to hear what he has to say. So that's frustrating. So I really feel that now the other path of getting your thought leadership out there is audio and the podcasting world. So when you then have that, now you are on people's phones or MP3 player or online or whatever. And so now you have to think about this. What is it that you as a business owner or an entrepreneur need to get out to the world so that your target audience fully understands what you do to help them solve the problems that they have? And sometimes they don't even realize the certain problems. So it's all an education, right? So talk a little bit about how you would recommend a small business owner or entrepreneur to use a podcast to help to kind of cultivate that in their business.
Well, if they truly understand that perfect avatar, the person that should be doing business with them, if they know what they're struggling with and going through, that's going to be the first step. Understanding who you're even attracting. You also want to understand at the same time what you want out of this. And I know it sounds so selfish and so mean and greedy, but we've got to make a living. We've got to put food on the table. And we either have to make money from our podcast, or we have to feel really good about launching a podcast. You've got to get something out of it. And so you want to identify those two things. Who am I attracting, and what do I want to happen? Just like you said a moment ago. Then what you're really going to be focusing on is, how can I deliver a unique proposition? And you mentioned that as well. You really talked about that unique proposition. What makes you stand apart? What are you doing differently? So instead of just being like, hey, in my business, for example, instead of me saying, hey, I can help you edit your podcast. People are like, well, okay, a lot of people can edit my podcast. But if I go in and I say, this is what it looks like to work with us. You push record, and we do everything else. Not to overwhelm you, but here's a few of the things that we're doing, just to name a few. After you push record and it goes to the cloud, we take that file, we edit it, we mix it, we audio engineer it, we equalize all the sounds between you and your guest or you and your co-host, and then we cut out some ums and ahs, not every single one. We still want it to sound natural, but we don't want to annoy your listener. We do all the editing. We write your show notes for you. We put the bumpers in, intro, outro. We even email your guest. We even email the guest for you. You don't even have to follow up the guest, because we have an email that we go in, that we're team@yourbusiness.com, and we email the guest and we say, thanks for coming on. Here's some marketing material that my team created that you could share the show. And so it makes it so your show gets ranked in the top 10%. You actually have listeners, because if ranking isn't a prideful thing, it's like if you're in the bottom 90%, then nobody's going to hear you. It's just how it is. It's like the Pareto principle, how the rich just keep getting richer. If you're in the top 10%, you're going to keep getting forced up and up and up. And if you're in the bottom 90%, then people are not going to see you. There's just too much other content out there. So our unique proposition is getting you all of the listeners that you want and making it as easy as you push and record. Now that I can say that, now that I can share that's our unique proposition, we don't just edit your podcast. We don't just help you market your podcast. We have guarantees, and we take off all the stuff and make it easy on you. You've got to do the same thing with your listener. When you're on your podcast, when you're sharing content out there, you want to think of it in terms of what they're going through. Instead of saying, I'm the best at getting you ranked, or I can edit your podcast. It's more about, you don't want to focus on your podcast. You don't want to have to stress about this, and you don't want to have no listeners to speak to. Let us take that off your plate, and we can guarantee the results. You know what I mean? You've got to have the messaging clear. And then after that, Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, could it continue? I want to hear after that. That sounds good.
After you know that you have your messaging clear and compelling to support your listener, now the time is that you're going to get your branding going. So you're going to come up with a title of your podcast that's going to capture them. Not a funny, quick, witty, easy title, not just a simple title. It's a compelling title. You got to figure that out. You got to have, we solve this problem on your artwork. So you get all the artwork. You get your intro, your outro, recorded with a voiceover artist, all of that stuff. And if you're working with us, shameful plug, right? If you're working with us, we do all that branding stuff for you. But if you're doing it on your own, you got to, those are the steps that you'll have to take. Now you're pressing record. These are some other things to think about. Every guest that I have on my show supports my avatar. They don't support me. I'm not just interested in the topic. Your avatar is interested in the topic. Because if you start having people on your show, and this happens in the multifamily industry, where the person really wants to attract capital, but what they're having on their show is, how do I find a deal? So they're trying to attract passive investors, but they're asking the wrong questions. They're asking, how do I find an apartment community? A passive investor could care less how it's found. They only want to invest the money. So you need to be really cautious with every episode, every question, every guest needs to benefit the avatar. A couple other key points that are going to be beneficial is, one, in the beginning of your podcast, you want to have an episode 0. It's called a trailer episode. And this needs to answer 4 main questions, and we can get into that if you want, but it needs to answer 4 main questions and be under 10 minutes. And then I like to suggest that you have a mini course, a free course, which is episodes 1 through 5 or 1 through 7, where it's you diving in with your avatar to help them get a result. I love doing a short trailer and then going straight into this mini course for the first few episodes, and then going into however you're going to do it. If you're going to interview other people, or if you're going to do it on your own, or if you're going to do a hybrid where some episodes are you solo, some are with the other person. The benefit by having the other person is that they might share the episode and grow your show for you. You're hacking into their network of people that are following them already. The benefit of you getting on one-on-one with them is now you're the expert. Now you get to pour into their business. You get to serve them, and they get to hear it from your mouth rather than just the guest's mouth. I hope that makes sense. The last thing that I will say is on the intro and the outro, it needs to be super short and concise on the intro, where it's 15 seconds or less. And everybody else is talking about sunshine and roses, flowers and rainbows and unicorns. Oh, this is the benefit of this is a great warm show and you're going to get warm feelings. That doesn't sell. I'm sorry. You need to actually, on the first 15 seconds, it needs to be something like, you don't want to mess up with your podcast. You don't want to get stuck in the bottom 90 percentile and not have any traction. So that's why you need to listen to this podcast so you can get in top 10% and make your life easy. So you got to give the pain point in your first 15 seconds. And then the outro, the only thing that I'll share, and then I'll turn it right back over to you for the outro, it needs to be a call to action. Pay close attention to the smallest word that I said. It was the word the letter A alone. It needs to be a call to action, a single call to action. I actually just today, before this call, have worked with 3 clients, and all 3 of them had up to 6 calls to action. I want you to subscribe. I want you to share this episode. I want you to give me a 5-star rating and a written review. And I want you to, and it just keeps going and going and going. It's not beneficial. You're confusing people. They're tuning out. What is one thing you want them to do? If it's to share the episode, maybe you could say something to the effect of, if you have a friend that could use this message, let's get this message off to them so that they can grow too. All I want you to do, it's really easy, push share on the episode and go ahead and send it to them, and you and I can grow this movement, where it's less about you, more about the person, more about the idea of what's happening. And remember, a singular call to action is always better than multiple.
I love it. Couldn't agree more. In fact, I have in front of me a copy of my latest book on Amazon, and it speaks to that exact point. The title is Brevity plus Clarity equals Authority. And I feel like that everyone listening to this right now can imagine or recount a time they've emailed someone and said, hey, guess what, Adam? Here's the update of what you asked for. Hey, can you get me this? And oh, by the way, also, what about the follow-up for the last time we spoke about? And they email back as a response with one of the answers. And you're like, I clearly asked you 2 or 3 things right in there. We are so trained because of our society of give me the answer now, text message, instant message, bots and Google. And if I don't know the answer, so let me Google it. I feel like we just need, if you want to get 3 things from someone, literally email them once. And then a few hours later, email them again, and you're going to get that. So to your point about having a singular call to action is spectacular and very, very important, because guess what? What would happen if that call to action was, example A? Well, in 2-3 months, you could change that outro and have a different call to action. It's not like you're tied to that for the next, 100 episodes. So I think that's a really, really huge point you bring up. Hey, what about, what do you find when you're working with people or hearing people talk about their podcasts? What's a common mistake that people are making?
The most common mistake is definitely ready, fire, aim. They've been told if you build it, they will come. They've been told don't overthink it. They've been told don't worry about the mic, and you can just do this from your phone or whatever. And my thought is, when you're jumping into a podcast, first impressions are lasting impressions, and your absolute best avatar are going to be the first people that start listening and coming in. And if it doesn't gain traction right at the beginning, then you will lose. There is the first 8 weeks of your podcast launching that you need to really be critical about marketing and branding. And people are just thinking, just because it's on iTunes now, I'm being broadcast to the world, is what they say. It's on iTunes, and so millions of people, hundreds of countries that can hear me speak. But what is interesting is iTunes does something called split testing, A/B testing. Social media does it as well, and the best marketers in the world do A/B testing. Well, social media and your podcast, they do this. Apple is putting your show next to somebody else's show. Somebody else's show is gaining traction because they're doing the hard work. And now it's going to be able to get it in front of people because they say, all right, something about this podcast is good, so I'm going to put it in front. So one of the biggest mistakes that I would say is people thinking that it's okay to just ready, fire, aim. If you build it, they will come. Because then they just hear crickets and they don't actually get listeners, and they wonder why. And they wait and wait and wait so long that it makes it even more of a challenge to be able to hack into Apple's algorithm to allow them to get in front of people. So I'd say that's probably the biggest mistake. The second biggest mistake, and I'll say it really briefly, so because your book is all about brevity, is if you don't serve your avatar on every single episode, you're likely to lose your avatar. And so you playing around and doing whatever you want on your podcast, if it's not serving your avatar, you're going to lose them.
It reminds me of a stat of if you do not stay in touch with your email list, you lose 10% of your influence every month that you don't communicate with them. And I feel like the same exact thing it applies to what you just said there. I just think that when people see a brand, and face it, if you're just you, yourself, and you're a brand still. But people see a brand and they do not respect that brand as much if you're all over the place. If you're talking about this one day and that the other day and this, and even if it's in your deliverables. And I found that in my business, I started my marketing firm 10 plus years ago and was all things to all people. If you needed text message marketing, SEO, social media, email, I could do it. But guess what? You were a jack of all trades. And when I refocused my business 5 years ago to just focus on authority positioning, now people go, ooh, I think I need that. And I go, yeah, here's the 2 packages I offer. And it just really clarifies it down. So really great point that you're bringing up there. Let's wrap up with this, Adam. What's the best way that people can, learn more? Because when they're hearing this going, I think I might need that podcast, and I like Done For You, and I want to learn a little bit more. What are some ways they can reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, let's, instead of some ways, let's give one way, a singular call to action. If you have a show, or if you're about to have a show, you need some help getting off of a plateau or just getting off the, your first footstep, go to growyourshow.com. It's simple as that. You can go to growyourshow.com and schedule a call with me and see what it is we offer and how we can help. Excellent.
Nice, simple, clear, and concise. I love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been really a pleasure talking with you today.
Same here.
Thanks, Adam.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.